Almost every country in the world is in debt. The United States owes more than $38 trillion, Europe nearly $14 trillion, and Japan has been living with massive debt for a long time. And if even oil-rich countries are in debt, one question naturally comes to mind. If everyone is in debt, who is the creditor? Here's the interesting part. The world isn't really in debt to any one specific entity. It is simply in debt to itself. It sounds a bit strange, but the logic is this. Governments borrow money, and that debt is bought by banks, funds, and pension systems. So in reality, it's your money, my money, everyone's money, being fed into the system. The government pays interest, and that interest flows back to citizens, for example, into pension funds. So the money just keeps circulating within the system, and this isn't new. Hundreds of years ago, when governments ran out of money because of wars, this system emerged. For example, in the 1600s, England borrowed from merchants during wartime. In return, it said, "I'll pay you regular interest." That's how government bonds were born. Over time, everyone started doing this, and borrowing stopped being seen as a sign of weakness. In fact, it became a sign of strength, because if you can borrow, it means people trust you. Today, the entire system is built on this. Think of it like this. Every country holds another country's debt. Everyone is interconnected. It's a bit like a poker table. Everyone is holding chips borrowed from someone else. And the game only continues as long as no one gets up from the table. But here's the most important point. Most of this debt isn't really meant to be paid off. It's meant to be rolled over continuously. Governments aren't actually thinking, let's pay it all off one day. On the contrary, they pay old debt with new debt. And this is considered normal, because if all debts were paid off, the system wouldn't be sustainable. Why? Because that debt is also someone else's asset. For banks, funds, even countries, these bonds are the safest thing they can hold. So debt is both a burden and the foundation of the economy. That's why the real goal isn't to eliminate debt, but to keep it under control. But there's a small detail here. This system doesn't benefit everyone equally. Interest payments generally flow from the bottom to the top. In other words, money collected through taxes goes to large investors and funds. That's why the debt system also increases inequality. In the end, we come to this point. There isn't a single villain at the top of the system. Not China alone, not the United States, not the banks. We're all part of it. Debt is no longer just debt. It has become money itself. And right now the entire system rests on one thing: trust. Everyone believes the game will continue. That's why it does. But if that trust is ever shaken, then everyone will have to rethink what these debts really were.